Hi there, I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air magazines. I'm here in my studio in Austin, Texas, and I've got a brand new video to show you. It's called Pastel FUNdamentals, and that's with Brenda Boylan. Now, she is so much fun. You're going to enjoy this segment.
Hi, I'm Brenda Boylan, and I am excited to share with you my knowledge and experience with pastels. I have a wealth of information that I hope to convey to you and share with you so that you got a foot in the door with your work. My intention is to share with you the possibilities with pastels. I'd love to share with you their qualities and their possibilities, how to make a strong and solid composition, and to create a solid color theme with your painting so it'll stand on its own and have this cohesive feel to it. I encourage you to relax, enjoy, and follow along with me. So I would love to share with you my inspiration for this video, for the painting that I'm going to share with you. And inspiration in your work is very important to acknowledge. And you have to think about those things that really make you feel good, or experiences that you've had, or anything like favorite colors or a feeling that you want to emote in your work. What do you want to say? And it's not all about pretty pictures. It's more about the intention of your work. And you have to dig really deep to discover what that is. And think maybe over a glass of wine or something, why you like what you like, or why you love what you love. So if you paint something that you love, then it's going to turn out, chances are it'll turn out very successful. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my inspiration for this video. And it is a barn on a hill, and my inspiration stems from my family background. We had a family farm that was generations, and it was recently sold. And I'm processing those feelings in my work by painting more barns and rural scenes. Also love the urban scene. I have other things that really make my juices flow. And so I pay attention to those ideas and feelings when I'm coming up with inspiration. And so while I go about my day, I see all sorts of things around me. I mean, I could just light, color, a moving object. I'm a little overstimulated at sometimes, but then there's things that I've narrowed down with what I see and what I like, and I start to inventory them in my brain, in my mind. So I have all these scenes of barns that I've come through or come to see across my journeys, and I want to be able to emote my feeling of timelessness and an era of antiquity, and there's a feeling of love and belonging, and maybe a time long ago. I would like to focus on the generation of the Great Depression, where things were simpler and calmer, and although they were very difficult and challenging, and I want to offer that respect to that generation through sharing old items and things that are from the 40s and 50s, those generation era time. So I think with that intention and knowing what I'm feeling and acknowledging what I really love, I'm able to create a really meaningful piece. And that's where it really gets exciting. So let's look at some of the supplies we're going to need for painting in pastel. So I'm going to share with you the supplies that we need to create a good piece. First of all, you're going to need pastels. And I'll talk a little bit about those in a moment. But first, some of the basics is we need to get a couple of foam brushes so that we can create some washes and wipe off mistakes. And we're going to use a mounted piece of pastel paper with a sheet of glassine on top that we fold back. You can use a hand barrier cream or rubber gloves. I use a nitrile base rubber glove. I use a vinyl glove, not a latex glove, because some people are allergic to latex. So I have these just in case I'm going to be getting really messy. And I also would suggest a 2-inch roll of masking tape. You'll use this to create a gutter and a way to mount your paper onto your board. So 2 inches is pretty adequate. I also suggest that you get some baby wipes that are at hand so that you can wipe and clean your hands off when you need to. That's nice and cheap, inexpensive product. And then I also use a color wheel that helps me decide on the color theme of my painting. And this is something that I would recommend all beginners to start looking into, because color theory is important to hold your painting together. This painting that I'm going to be working on will be on a split complementary color theme. I'll be working between these two colors here that are opposite of the color wheel, a red-orange to a blue-green. These two colors here are complementary colors, and what I'll do is I'll go across from the complementary colors. I'll go right adjacent. So I'll have the hues of orange and hues of red and hues of blue-green. And we'll get more into that as we go along, but a color wheel is real important with your designing of your work, because it really will help you to know how to mix your pastels in the future as you start getting further into the pastel work. With a little bit of color theory, you could probably find some information, some books out there, or some information on the internet on color theory. There's a wealth of knowledge of color theory, and color theory is so fun. I love looking at ways how people combine colors, and there's some basic simple instruction on that on the internet. I'm sure you can go there, but I'm going to cover with my painting today a split complementary color theme. I also will be using alcohol to use as a wash to help dispense my pastel pigment. You can use it in a bowl like this with your foam brushes, or you can put it in a little spritzer bottle and spray it on your composition with the pastel that's already on. And you have to wipe it down or get it knitted into the pastel paper with your foam brush. Another very important thing to have is your pastel paper that's dry mounted to foam core. And it's a nice sturdy board. It gives it a nice support. It doesn't bend or bow when it gets moisture on it. So when you have your painting on there, it's not going to curl. And then I have a sheet of glassine that's taped on the back of my panel. And when I'm all good and done, I pull the glassine over, back onto my painting, and I knit it down by just petting the pastel with this glassine. And glassine is like tissue paper or wrapping paper, but without a tooth. So it's very slick, and it doesn't have anything that'll catch any of the pastel pigment off, because pastel is dust. It's just it's pure pigment. So let's talk a little bit about what pastels are and how they work. Here in my pastel box, what I lovingly call my box of rocks, is a series, or is a theme from warm to cool to neutral. I've started out with my yellows and oranges, to my reds, red violets, violets, to blue, blue-green, to green, and then neutrals, all my neutrals. And this box changes as I work, and as I work with a new piece, then I'll take a pastel out or I'll add another pastel into it. But it's always changing, and it's so exciting. It's so beautiful. I love it. It's just amazing how colorful it is. Also, too, how I've had my pastel box laid out is I work from values. So I'll have my darker values of yellows, and yellows have a very limited value range. They go to about from light yellow, say this beautiful light yellow color right here, all the way to, it starts to go a little orange and it dies out. There's no such thing as a dark yellow. Its range is very limited. So I combine my yellows with my oranges and oranges into like a brick color, the muted browns. And then for my red category, they start from the light pinks. You can see some of the purples have moved in here just for room. And you can see how these are put in here like a maze. And they change their places all the time. It's kind of fun. And anyway, so it goes from pink to red, vivid reds to burgundies. And also little hints of warm red and cool reds. You can see how they just, wherever they can fit. And then I move on to the violets. Same thing, from the light violets down to the darkest darks. Now you can see the violets have the largest range of values. Look at this beautiful dark violet. I just love this color. It's so intense. This is probably the most intense dark color I have. So anyway, that one is highly coveted. And so anyway, violets range from very, very, very light to very, very dark. And as you can see, my very light violets in this area here are still much darker than a pink or a light yellow. You can see the change in value, just a hint. If you squint your eyes and look at your pastels or make a mark on your panel to test it, then you can see how the values really are reacting. So here's my violets, and we'll move on to the blues. You can see I have a series of warm to cool blues in here tucked in. There's always never the perfect color that you want, so the inherent problem with working in pastels is that you end up buying more pastels than you need to. So my recommendation for you is to get a basic box of pastels, and they come in hard to soft qualities, and the harder they are, there's more binder in them, and their abilities are more like a drawing pastel. Or you can have a pastel that's much more softer and there's more pigment in it, and they are so luscious. But the problem with a very soft pastel is they can break easily, and the pigment will get everywhere. So, and they're just so intense. And then also, let's see, the quality of the colors and ranges that you can get in pastels are immense. And you don't need to start out with a box full of every color. There's no reason why you have to. Just get a basic set and pull off the wrappers, because the wrappers interfere with your creative flow. All right, so let's get set up and get our supplies prepared and ready to rock. So now we're going to start on blocking in the underpainting and watch some exciting things happen. So I have here my illustration, my layout of my painting, my idea, and I made a grid on my panel like a tic-tac-toe, and I was able to transfer the information into each square accordingly. That way, if you don't have excellent drawing skills or average drawing skills, you can do it really simply by creating a grid and laying it out. I'm going to select a 4-value underpainting for this piece. And here I have some underpainting colors. I'm going to do it a very relatively monochromatic underpainting. And so I'm going to start out with my darker values first, and I'm going to lay these darker values where they belong in the painting. I'm going to apply them on the side of the pastel, and I'm going to apply them very lightly and brush them down like a feather on a table. And I'm going to add this in here very lightly, like I said. And I'm starting with my darkest values first. And I'm going to put a little bit of it along here where the shadow is. That's a little bit more of on the detail side of things. And then I'm going to add some darker value in here. I am not looking for detail at this point. I'm looking for shapes. So this is very broad and put in liberally. So there's my darkest dark, and then I'm going to move on to my mid-range value of the barn, which is on the darker side. I'm going to use a harder pastel for underpainting, and actually using a harder pastel for underpainting is better because you're not utilizing those more expensive pastels that have more pigment in them. There's more binder in this pastel version than any of these other pieces, better than any of these other pastels here in this tray. So I'm going to use this rounded one here for my barn, and I'm going to lay it in and let that do its beautiful work. And I'm not doing it exactly like it is. I'm just being very liberal and free about how I'm putting it down. It's not going to be seen in the final painting. So don't worry about that. This is just like putting in an underpainting or putting your underwear on, I guess, if we're to put it in a way that we all understand. And then I'm going to move on to the green values, the green values within the trees. And I'm going to use I think I'm going to use a ruddy rusty or maybe a reddish. I think I'll use something like this color. Oh, this is a beautiful color. Oh my gosh. I'm going to put this for the trees, and again I'm going to apply this very lightly. I'm not pushing in very hard. And you can put them in any which way you want, like this, sideways, whatever, but I just kind of do it in stripes like that. And then we're going to move to the lighter values, which will be into the light oranges. So for the field, I'm going to use this orange, this yellow-orange color. I have two of them. Let's see here. I might go to this one. This one has a little more of a flatter edge on it. So I'll start with that. And I'm going to try to avoid each and every one of these Queen Anne's lace. It's not going to be easy, but I'm going to do my best and see what I can. And you know, there are mistakes in art, but you don't have to get so worked up about being so perfect when it comes to the underpainting. Just kind of let it flow. So I'm going to let it flow, and I'm going to put this down. I'm going to run around these Queen Anne's lace, climbing up to the top of the hill. I'm trying not to apply too much pressure, because I don't want to add too much pastel into the tooth of the paper at this point, because this is just the underpainting. So you want to use the sanded paper. I love using the sanded paper because it provides an opportunity for you to make lots of texture with your pastels, which are really the fun part about pastels, is applying the mark making. All right, and that is my foundation for my underpainting. Now let's move on to the actual underpainting. So what I'm going to do is you can use a rubbing alcohol in a spray mist bottle, but if you do, your mister needs to not have any little you have to test it so it doesn't spray out big glops of alcohol. You want to test your spray so it's a fine mist. And so what I'm doing, though, is I'm going to use the other alternative. Is I'm going to start with rubbing alcohol. 99% isopropyl alcohol. And my foam brush. I have 2 foam brushes. I'm going to use one for the lighter values and one for the darker values. And so I'm going to start with the lighter values first, because as I clean off my brush or get more alcohol in my brush, I'm going to need to clean off, squeeze off the alcohol out of it. The color will drain into the alcohol pool and contaminate it. So I want to start with my lighter values first so that I don't have dark pigment in the alcohol. I'm also going to squeeze and milk out this sponge brush because I don't want to put too much alcohol down in one pass. And I'm going to apply it here, and look how beautiful that pastel, it just melts right into the sanded paper, and it's so, oh my gosh, it's so exciting. I'm getting color down, and I'm going to add a little bit more as I go and then build up on this. As I add more alcohol to my brush, I have to continue to milk the sponge brush so it's not loaded with alcohol. You don't want to have it have too much alcohol, because then your underpainting design will run and it'll drip. So you might see a few drips in this example here. And but boy, it feels so good to get some color down and start to actually enjoy the process now that we've done all the foundational parts of this painting process. It is feeling good. Yeah. I can't tell you how excited I am to finally get this down. Again, I'm milking my underpainting brush to make sure I don't have too much alcohol in it. You can tell when the brush gets a little dry, when it just feels a little dry. See, now it's getting kind of dry right there, so I'm going to have to add a little bit more. And when I milk the foam brush into the alcohol pool, out comes pigment. And so my pool will look yellow, yellow-orange. Now, things can easily change on the fly with your painting process. You may decide that, I don't like what's happening here. And the beauty of pastels is you can move things around pretty easily. But it really does help to have a foundation as you're starting out. And so that's why I picked something relatively easy to start out with the value blocks and simple shapes. Nice. Now I just remembered I need to put a lighter value in the sky as an underpainting. I completely forgot that. So there. Even professionals have to kind of wing it. So I have a light peach, a light orange color, and as orange goes into the color wheel and it ranges down into a lighter value, it looks like a peach. So and this is a very soft pastel. It's so fragile, it wants to crumble in my hands. So that means I need to apply it very, very lightly on this panel so I don't fill in the tooth. And I don't know if you can see this very well, this pigment, but it will show you the color once I wash it in. Also too, one of the disadvantages of forgetting about this sky and roof line was that it's a lighter value, and I have this orange already in my pool. So I just have to forgive myself, move on, and let's just see. And also too, this little bit of orange might be helpful to warm up this sky color. Oh yeah, see, I'm really happy with that. So yay for that. Yay for that mistake. What do they call them? Happy little mistakes? Woohoo! Just trying to be consistent with my brushing. It looked like it was making some vertical marks because I was brushing it in vertically, and also partly my pencil underpainting, or my drawing underneath is transferring into the underpainting. That will all end up being covered up by the pastels, but it may affect it a little bit. And as I'm touching that darker line there, where the shadow of the roof line, it's kind of melting into this alcohol as well. So I gotta be kind of careful with this. You know, in this underpainting up here in the sky, already you can see, oop, there's a nice little drip. That's cool, I'll let it happen. Already this value of this, the color of this sky underpainting is already kind of the color that I want the painting to be. But I will bring in some of the pastel into that. Now I'm going to move into the next darkest value. Oop! Wait! I forgot to put this value down here in the flowers. I'm just too excited. Let's add some of this in here, just a little, so that there's some color in here. Boy, I almost skipped you guys up. Boy, that's naughty. Just add a little bit of color in there and see what happens. Now, this isn't science, this is just art. And we have to be very forgiving of ourselves when we start out painting. Very forgiving. Because, you know, I've had hundreds of thousands of failed paintings, and each one is a learning lesson in themselves. And so I don't get upset with myself when I make a bad painting, because there was always something very worthy in that process of creating. I don't get mad at myself for that. And I can only say that because I know how true it is. And you may find out that if you have a failed painting that you think is a failed painting at one given point in time, may end up being a really nice piece in the end anyway. So don't dispose of them. Come back to them and look at them and reevaluate where you went wrong or what went right in the painting, so that you can add that to your list of education as you move, or your list of knowledge and experience as you move forward with your painting life. Now, when you're using a foam brush on sanded paper, it's natural that your foam brush is going to get chewed up really well. That's what's so great about these little foam brushes, is that they're super inexpensive. And I burn through them quite easily. Also, too, I may have some of these Queen Anne's lace laid in, but that doesn't mean I can't add a few more in there if I want, which I probably will. And you notice too in the composition, I'm going to have these Queen Anne's lace lead the eye in to the focal point, right, which is going to be right around here. Strong to my composition, and ooh, love, ooh, look at how that, yummy, starting to look exciting. If you ever get tape stuck to your sanded paper, the tape will leave behind a gum base, and then your underpainting or your pastel might change the color of it. So try to keep your pastel paper clean and away from other materials so that it can be the best surface for your work. I'm selecting areas here. I'm going back and forth. Hopefully you're able to keep up with me on that. And moving along, I'm doing a vertical mark because I think that the barn could have vertical boards or slats. I could do it in a horizontal way. Maybe I have it horizontal over here. Let's just try that just for fun. Why not? And now that I've got that barn painted in, I'm going to use that same value for the trees. And I chose a red underpainting for my trees because the green and the red together, they're complementary colors. And you see how that ran like that? I had to pick up my paintbrush and eliminate some of the alcohol in it so it became more of an absorbent. And I wicked up those dripping drips. It's okay if you have some dripping drips. It's just the underpainting. You're going to be covering it up with pastel anyway. So this isn't something like rocket science right yet. I'm getting closer to being done with the underpainting here. I'm going to add in kind of where the shaded area of the tree is. And a few runs here and there might not hurt it. And I'm going to have to try and catch them just in case. But I really like what that's doing there. How fun. And then I'm going to take some of this darkness from my pen, from my painting, and I'm going to add some down below here so that I can lead the eye. I'll grab some of that. So I can lead the eye like this is the shaded area of the field. And I can bring the eye up like we're coming in from the hill. Ooh, looks like it's really starting to run on me. Let me grab it. Okay, so I'm going to dry off my foam brush and wick it away. Yeah, it's really a problem over here, but not too bad. I can't say it's going to ruin my painting, that's for sure. I'm going to wick my brush, and wipe it up. All's forgiven. All right, so let me get some of this color again, like I was trying to. I'm going to bring it into the foreground. And hopefully have that lead in to this barn. Grab a little more of that pigment from here, just lightly. Bring it in over here. Because some of these flowers, or Queen Anne's lace, or weeds, I have a story about that I'll tell you. Some of them are going to be providing some shadows on them and different shapes and all that. Now I'm going to move into the darkest value, and that is the mysterious part of this barn opening. Oh, you can see how it's just wanting to drip. And I'm going to take that leftover pigment on my brush and add it into this shadowed area. Let it run a little bit. You can almost like paint in the painting with the underpainting. How about them apples? Now I'm going to get this inside of the barn where all the equipment is stored. And I'm going to have, like, there's a little, whoopsie, that's really starting to run. Let's pull that back. I'm going to use my cotton rag to wick up all that alcohol. But that's not a bad thing, because sometimes these little happy accidents happen, and I can cover over that or make that part of the flowers coming up. So anyway, as I was going to say, I'm going to have some light coming through underneath, and I still need to put a little bit of color in there, so I'm going to dab that in there. And I'm going to have some of this in here, and I have to be real careful with this darker value because it wants to really run. Look at that, it's really wanting to run, but it's not that bad of a problem. All right, so that is how my underpainting is, and it's a lot of fun. It smells like alcohol. The alcohol disperses the pastel and glues it into the tooth of the paper, and you let it dry for a few minutes, and then we get started. Hi, I'm Brenda Boylan, and welcome to my workshop. In this workshop, we're going to be diving into pastels, and I'm going to teach you everything you're going to need to know to create a good painting. We're going to be learning about the materials, the supplies, the composition, color theory. There's so much to learn about pastels that my intention is to share everything that I know. What's unique about my workshop is that I love to teach fun things. I love to have fun while I'm teaching. The workshop should be lighthearted, and that way we're more likely to receive this information a lot easier when we use a light approach. What holds students back is the fear of failure and making mistakes on their work, and they're inhibited by perfectionism. You'll see that even I make mistakes as a professional artist, and that there's ways to fix them. I like to address this as a real creative medium, and if I can help you have a lot of fun, your ability to learn faster will come along with the joy of creating. A student's painting skills are only built with their intention to build and upon and practice. It doesn't come magically. So come join me in this painting journey along with all my other little pastel friends here, my pastels, and we can make some color.
Well, that is Brenda Boylan. That segment is from the new video called Pastel FUNdamentals, and you can learn more about it at painttube.tv. If you want to get that video, we have a special discount code for you. Just look in the comments section for the code and use it when you check out. Now let's get right to the interview we did with Brenda. Hi there, I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air magazine. Today, our guest, the great pastel artist, Brenda Boylan. Brenda, welcome.
Thank you, Eric. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you here. We want to learn all about you and your career and your background and pastel painting. We don't have a whole lot of time, but we should be able to fill it in like 5 minutes, right? That'll do it?
No.
No?
I'll keep it short.
How did this passion for art begin for you?
I remember as far back as pre-kindergarten, laying on the kitchen floor with crayons and a piece of paper, waiting for my sister to come home from school. Mm-hmm. And as I grew up, and we spent a lot of time in public places, and while my mother sat around, I drew napkins on pieces of paper, whatever I had available. And I just did it because I was wasting time, and I just had this tendency to really enjoy it. We had a craft table at home, and whenever we were bored, Mommy, what can we do? What can we do? Go make me something pretty. So we always had those things available to us. It wasn't like it was completely encouraged, but it was there. And we'd go out and build mud forts, and always making things out of mud or Play-Doh or whatever we had. My hands were constantly doing something. So I can tell you that's where it all started.
And then what took it to the next level where you actually were pursuing art?
Well, high school, I had 4 years of art, and I remember telling my parents I wanted to do something in that category, and they suggested I either be a bus driver or an accountant. Like, not even.
Yeah, so they wanted you to aim high.
Yeah, right. Anyway, it was really interesting. I'm thinking, this is impossible. They really wanted me to have a paycheck. This is what they were telling me.
Of course.
So, but I pursued it. I kept on taking art classes in junior college, and then went off to study graphic design, and I did design for a couple of corporations, and I just felt like I was wasting myself away. I was not happy.
Did you know anything about fine art at the time? I mean, you knew, obviously you had done it in college and school and so on, but had you really put the thought in your head of, I should be doing paintings and selling paintings for a living?
Well, I was painting all along.
You were?
I was painting all along. In college, I was painting. Besides graphic design studies, I had illustration and acrylic, watercolor, oil painting, but it wasn't in depth. It was just to support the design field. But when I was working corporate, I took classes after work at the junior college just to get my hands in it always. I had to feed it, and it was, I didn't know it was something I could not live with, but now I have to live with it because I know that's where I'm at.
Right.
Yeah, it's real important to me.
First museum visit?
Oh my gosh. I think I was, well, I don't, my memory's bad, but I do remember going to a museum in Washington, D.C. As a kid, and I remember my first museum visit was in San Diego at Balboa Park as a kid, because we grew up there, and we'd go in there. My grandmother would take me, and you'd see these massive masterpieces, and if you could get up close enough, you can see the little cracks in the oil, and just how beautiful these pieces were created by a paintbrush. They looked real, like you can put your hand in them. And that just was so stunning to me and inspirational. And I love I love Vermeer. Remember we had that conversation? I still love his work. And the Dutch masters, I don't paint anything like them, but I just love that period of time.
Was there ever, at any point, a particular painting that just stuck in your soul that you couldn't stop thinking about? You mentioned Vermeer. Was there a Vermeer painting or some other artist that, kind of drove you?
I would say, I think a lot of things come to mind when I think of fine art. But
let's talk about them all.
It would be Vermeer. It would be Monet, which Monet and the French Impressionists get a lot of attention because it was such a new thing. That's when they developed oil paint that can go into a tube and it be transportable outside. And I just think, oh, there's that history. They used to grind it up into a mortar in a bowl, and now they can take it outside, and they're looking at how light is affecting things around you, and that's exciting, because when you go outside, like when we would go on the plein air conventions, and we get to go to different places, or when I'm plein air competing, the light is different wherever you go, and so I think of the Impressionists and how they're going to interpret that, and it's just so joyful when you get out there. Yeah, it's like you're breathing in the air and the environment and the smell of the foliage around you, and the sun or wind or all the elements are at hand, and you're feeding all your senses, and it's just, you come out, it's like you've had a big old brain massage.
A brain massage.
Yeah.
I've never heard that term before. Well, you know, you and I were talking at dinner last night about the support structure that you have around you from other artists in the community that you live in, which is in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, we have a strong community of artists there, and because I can give a few people very big credit, can I?
Yeah, you can, but before we go there, let's kind of talk about what that community of plein air painters has done for you in terms of, you know, plein air painting is more than just getting out there and being in the senses. It's this camaraderie that is occurring.
Yeah. There is it's a huge group of artists, and I can't give COVID any credit for dismembering us, but there's a group of artists that gather once a week, and some can come and some don't, and then there's plenty of places to paint in the Portland metro area or the areas outside of Portland that are so spectacular, so beautiful. You have the Columbia River Gorge, you have the coast, you have Washington is just above us, and farmland, which is something that I'm really paying a lot of attention to. But you can go at the drop of a hat, and if someone calls you up, you have your gear ready, you can go. If you're available to do it, of course. But there's plenty of artists there that you can always call upon and go. And then once a year, I think it's Labor Day, where we all have a Labor Day paint out at this one point in Portland where it's easily reachable, yet it's like a reserve, and it's heaven. It's awesome.
Well, and the reason I wanted to go there is because you were talking about plein air painting, and it is, somebody I talked to just yesterday said it's almost like a sport. You know, it has a lot of, you know, there's a challenge to it. Yeah. You're outdoors, and you're, in a sense, in some ways, you're competing with others, though you're not really competing, but you're collaborating with others, or you're at least, you know, sharing. You're together, you're outdoors, you're having fun. And so people who become plein air painters develop this sense of community. You know, any town you're in, you're going to find a few that you can go hang out with, and so you don't have to be alone, but you can be.
Yeah, and the thing is when you're plein air painting, you're out there, and if you forget something, good chance someone else might have a little thing to help you get by, like a roll of tape.
Right.
Or a safety pin, or, you know, I forgot something, or
a color, yeah.
Yeah, and everybody helps everybody out. One time I showed up and I didn't have my paintbrushes when I was painting with oil. Everyone helps everybody out. That's what is the community about, is that, you know, I've got an extra one, no problem. Everyone's just generous about helping each other out. We're like, you can take the roll, I don't need it, you know, and you can have this, or here, why don't you have this extra pastel? I got zillions of them, you know. Yeah. But you know, there's always someone you can call on, or there's a community of helping drive, or gathering and meeting at a place. And you know, the community changes every season, because someone may fall out of the patterns, or they're busy with something else, but it changes every year. And right around the end of fall, I start to think, gosh, I wonder what it's going to be like next year. Who's going to pull forward? Who's going to step back? Who's going to be the new talent that comes on board? Who's doing what? How did their artwork change? Where are they going? It's
fluid and dynamic.
Yeah, fluid. It's very fluid, and it's really quite a wonderful group of people. I don't think there's anyone I don't like in our community.
There's nobody that you don't like anyway. You're not that type of person. You always like everybody. But you wanted to give props to somebody in the organization, or the founder of the organization?
Oh yeah, I have to give Celeste Bergen a big hand. She's kind of like the glue to the artist community. She puts together a group called Alla Prima Portland, and she emails once a week where things are happening or where they're going. And she's a humble person. She doesn't really need any credit, but I think she's the glue.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So, why do you paint? What is it? You said you have to do it constantly. I think you said I have to do this every day. Why do you paint?
Well, I think the reward is when my vision and my creativity come together down on paper or canvas, and there's that reward right there.
The reward of
making it,
accomplishing?
yeah, of making something that I can make. And I think it's more of a challenge that we put upon ourselves to do better. We're always wanting to learn. And so you're trying to grow. It's this process of developing yourself, and it's never ending. And every time you put pigment down on paper, you're changing. It's amazing.
So I don't hear that a lot. I hear that, and I'm not being critical. What I'm saying is I don't hear this discussion about growth a lot. You know, some artists will get to a particular point where they're happy with what they're doing, and they stay there forever. And then you have others who say, you know, I've got to constantly be moving up the needle, getting better. What's driving that?
Time. I don't have a lot of time, and neither do you. We're not here forever. And
Well, maybe you're not.
well, I think about, like, what's next? What am I going to do next? What's going to come out of me next? Let's just try. And there's inspiration around me, and there's things that I see that it's kind of like, what's your favorite flavor? And who knows what it'll be next year. And I want to try and make the best out of that. And that inspiration comes together when you have the time to put it down. And it's like this personal challenge inside. I think that's what it is. I mean, everyone wants to be good at something. Everyone does. It's our human gift. And mine kind of comes from the painting. That's where it's at.
Is there any drive for recognition? Some artists drive, you know, I oftentimes hear from artists that they got such great accolades when they were kids. Oh, Johnny, you did such a beautiful crayon drawing, or you stayed within the lines, or whatever. That sometimes that part drives them, the recognition.
Yeah.
Does that play into this at all for you?
I would say it did in the beginning. And things are changing for me right now.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. I would say mostly this year, with the time that we've had in isolation, I am more interested in painting what means something to me personally. And I keep on hearing the word in my head, intentions. What do I love? What do I cherish? And it was like this light went off in my head, where for me, I'm wanting to pull upon those emotions of my grandparents and that generation where there was struggle, the Great Depression. My grandparents were farmers, and we don't have the farm in our family anymore. And I'm grieving that and processing that on oil and pastel.
Oh, so you're creating a series on the farm, if you
I'm
would?
building up a series of farming, because here's where also what stems from it as well, Eric, is I was on a plein air trip to Door County, and I saw this barn, and it had a silo. It was so picturesque and so beautiful, and I'm like, shall I stop my car and go ask if I could paint the barn? Because I know I've heard of people painting barns or painting farms, and then the farmer comes out with their shotgun, get off my property, you know?
I have had that happen to me.
I'm sure it has, but so I'm like, okay, not even 5 foot, and I'm this solo, me, driving down the street, and like, maybe I gotta turn back and go back over to that farm, and shall I do it? Okay, I'll do it. So I pull into the driveway, and I see that scene that I want to paint, and I can hear, like, there's a little house there, and I knock on it, and I look in the window. God, it was so noisy and so bold. No one's in there. It was empty. And then I heard this radio in a barn next to this other barn. It was over here. And I thought, well, I'll just go over there and see if anybody's in there. And I walk in there, and these two farmers like, whoa, what's this little lady doing? and I'm like, hi, my name's Brenda Boylan. I'm an artist. And they're like, ooh, you know, because they're still like freaked out because I just scared them. They were in there working on a bicycle or a wheel or fixing a flat tire or something in there. And I shocked them. And I said, well, I'm an artist, and I'd really love to paint your beautiful barn. And they're like, well, you're too little to paint that thing. And I'm like, no, not paint your barn. So I said, I want to paint a picture of your barn, and I just would love to have your permission if I could. And the farmer's like, well, sure, let me show you around.
Oh.
Oh my God. Oh, I'm so glad I asked. And he showed me around his stall of cattle underneath the cow pen or whatever. And there was a big pig sow in there nursing some piglets, and he had a turkey on there, and I don't know what else he had in the barn, but you know, farmer stuff. And I called one of my other friends, Kim Vanderhoek, to come out and paint with me there because she had just come from Easton. And it's always fun to have another artist there with you to paint with.
Yeah.
So I said, girlfriend, come on out here. And so we started painting the barn, and the farmer decided to take a break from whatever he's doing, and he asked us if he wanted to have a lemonade. And so he went into town and got us a lemonade, and then he gave us some fresh steak to take home to our hosts. And it was just, and he sat down and visited with us the whole time. We heard about how hard it is for a farmer to survive. And this is where this story's going, Eric. Took a long route on that one. But his kids are growing up. They're not going to be farming. They're going off to corporate jobs, universities, getting educated, and don't want to live the life of a farmer.
It's a hard life.
It's a hard life. And he was talking about how he had to climb up this very long extension ladder to patch up a hole in his barn so his barn will keep his animals warm in the winter, in the Wisconsin winter. And he had fallen and cracked ribs. He said, I've done that twice. And he said, my kids don't want to follow after me. And I, hearing that experience from him made me think, I've heard that story from this farmer, and I've heard that from my family, and because we all didn't go into farming. And so these barns are falling apart. They're dilapidated. They're falling apart. There's so much history. The weather tears them up. And I'm just wanting to get those before they're gone.
Yeah, because everybody's building metal barns now.
Exactly.
Which is not very romantic.
Exactly. And that's that culture I'm wanting to try and capture that still, and instill the family traditions or the family sense of ownership and belonging to the earth. And it's hard work. There's so much pride in what they can do, and I see little bits of it being gobbled up by landowners, and soon they're going away. And in the Portland region, there's several barns that have been torn down already for developments, and that especially is hitting a nerve with me as well.
Well, this goes back to this role of plein air painting and the gift of plein air painting, because we have throughout the world, but especially in the United States, we have painters who are going out and preserving the land in the sense of documenting it and doing museum shows of places. I went to a museum show of paintings where everything in the painting is now a shopping mall or a development, and because development's happening so heavily. Yeah. So you have these groups and individuals who are going out there not only to paint it and preserve it, but to call attention to it so that maybe there will be some preservation by some people. But you also have these experiences. As you were telling me this story of the farmer, I flashed to painting on a farm in Maine with Rick Wilson. We were out there for Fall Color Week, and we saw this farm that had this beautiful lake in the distance and these beautiful mountains and this gorgeous aging red barn, and we went up and we knocked on the door, and oh yes, of course you can do that. Next thing you know, we're in the house and she's showing us her photo album of her kids, and she's making sandwiches for us and bringing them out to us. And we would have never met somebody like that. These are not things that occur in our everyday lives, but there's 100 stories like that for each of us when, you know, somebody stops and starts talking to you, and then next thing you know, you're over at their house for dinner, or you know, things like that happen all the time.
It's a community building, this plein air thing. It just has something about it, brings people together.
So are you going to, you have this emotional connection to the farm thing because of your grandparents and your parents. Is this going to be a show of paintings that you end up keeping for your own purpose, your own soul, or is this something you're going to be sharing?
I'll be sharing and selling them. I'll be showing them. That hasn't been quite planned yet. I know that my galleries, because I've been working on my other project as of late, the past year, when I get back to the studio, I'm going to be painting lots of those memories that I've put on hold, and my galleries are going to get them. And then I will be having a show in Portland here with the work that I'm working on right now with the barns.
You know, some artists put all their work out there into the marketplace, and I hear this a lot of, I wish I had kept certain pieces, or their wife or husband wishes they had kept certain pieces, and so that they could, you know, enjoy them, live with them, pass them on to the family, and so on. And I was even thinking about this myself, that the best work that I'm doing isn't staying at home. So what I have at home is not my finest, and yet that's probably more likely to live on with my family if they're interested.
Yeah, that's true.
What are your thoughts about that?
What are my thoughts about that? I do it all the time. Sometimes, sometimes I have a couple pieces and I have a lot of work, and it starts to build up, and you're like, well, I really want to hold on to this one. I'm willing to get rid of this one or sell this one. And there have been pieces that I didn't want to sell, but I knew it was cherished and it was sold to the right person. And so that painting has a home. And I know how much it's going to be loved because I'm going to miss it, and it means a lot to me. And that's this gift that we give that continues to give as long as that painting's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to get rid of them, or not get rid of them, but hard to let them go, like children. Each piece is a learning process. Each piece you learn something new. Each piece is going to either look good or bad, like a child. Right. You know, I'm not a perfect artist. I'm just a creator. I'm just making things. And it depends on how I'm feeling for the day. Or maybe you'll go out and you'll plein air paint and the piece will paint itself, and you go home and you're high. You're just like, wow, it just came together. And other pieces, they're a battle.
And sometimes you conquer them and sometimes you lose.
Yeah, but I don't regret that piece. I don't diss it. I don't, you know, you may toss it into a pile, but there's a lesson there.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, Dan, and do you go through these moments where you just feel like you're looking at your work and you feel like, I'm not good enough yet?
No.
You never do?
No.
That's good.
No, I'm happy.
So is that
I'm happy to paint.
Is that a self-talk thing, or is that, I mean?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and also too, I think, you know, there's times where I'll have pieces and I don't like them, and I might go back and rework them, or I'll just start another one, because who knows, that one might be different than the first one, and they always are. Yeah, there's no way to replicate your work. It's all original.
So one of the things I like to do, I know that we're not interviewing me, but the first thing I look for when I'm in a museum is, where are the plein air paintings? You know, and I remember a specific spot. We were in Munich, and there was this museum, and they had this display of plein air paintings from this one particular artist, German artist I didn't know. And then they had all the studio works and so on. And I was so drawn to the energy of the plein air pieces. A lot of them were, you know, just little tiny things. And to me, I realized I had an epiphany moment at that time. And that epiphany moment was keep your studies, sell your studio paintings.
Yes.
And because every one of those little plein air studies speaks to me about that moment, that education, that moment when a deer leaped across the fence in front of me, or a rattlesnake was in the grass, or you know,
There's
somebody
a
walked up
story
to me.
behind each
Every
piece.
single one has a story.
Yeah.
And yet when I do the studio painting, and it's always a little bit different, and it comes out differently. So in my particular case, my way of kind of holding on to some of that is holding on to the plein air pieces and just never selling them.
Right.
And when I do, I always regret it. You know, sometimes somebody will talk me out of one here and there, but then it's like the one that got away. I think about it.
Oh, yeah, and I wish I kept that one, because I could look at that and then get inspired to do another something or other. And yeah, that's heartbreaking, isn't it?
It can be.
Yeah.
So if anybody watching that's not an artist is like, what are these people talking about? Yeah, crazy.
Change the channel.
Yeah. So speaking of changing the channel, you kind of are not, you're known, very well known as a pastel artist, but you're also an oil painter. Do you do any other mediums as well?
Not as of late, but if I had more time, I would do clay.
Oh, you would?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, clay is a young person's thing, you know, because once you get to a certain point, you know, it becomes much harder. You know, George Carlson, for instance, told me, you know, he is a great clay artist, a great sculptor, and he had to give that up because, you know, arthritis, and because the clay is cold. So you better get going on that, get that started. You got a lot of time yet, but.
Yeah, that's a good thought.
Or wear heated gloves, maybe.
Well, yeah, okay. Or I can, I could put, yeah, I use sometimes a vinyl glove when I'm painting with pastel. And maybe I just put some heaters in there or something.
Put some of those little heat things.
But it's the touch, the sensation of holding it, and just the slimy stuff in your hands, and you get to mold it into something from your head. I mean, it's gushy fun.
Gushy.
It is gushy fun.
Gushy fun. There are a lot of gushy
Sorry.
fun. So, but why pastel? Pastel is kind of the medium that you tend to focus on the most. Is that right?
I bounce back and forth.
You do.
But I have to say, this is where I started really getting into it. And when there was an open studio thing in Portland, and it was pretty new. This was a new concept. And I thought, well, shoot, I'm going to go tour, and I'm going to see what other artists are doing. Another thing that built upon my bucket of experiences. And I went to an artist named Kitty Wallace, and she has developed her own papers, and she even rolls her own pastels. And so she had a piece of paper, if you want to learn how to do pastel painting, sign up. So I'm like, I'm in. Her work is so colorful and so expressive and so vivid and gorgeous. It was like,
I don't think there's any medium that's more vivid in terms of the color really resonating than pastel.
She is amazing, and she's getting on in years, and I'll go over, she lives in the Portland area, and I've gone over to her house to roll pastels with her, and she's a great conversationalist.
You roll them, but you don't smoke them.
No, I know it sounds kind of bad, doesn't it? But she has the ingredients that you can make them with.
The pigments.
Yeah, and what I love about that is this kind of reminds me of being under the car with my dad as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, if you want your car fixed, you had to help me do this with you. Well, so Kitty, you know, she'd say, here's where we're going to put the gum tragacanth, and here's this other ingredient, and then you add a little scoop of this blue pigment, and if you want purple, add a little bit of this red, and so you learn color theory.
So you're learning not just how to use pastels, but you're learning how to make them.
How to make them.
How to create the colors.
Yeah, and I love that part of it, because if one of my pastels falls to the ground and cracks, I'm gonna just re-roll me a whole nother pastel. And it might be a whole nother color, because I could take drippings from, or dust from other pastels and make a whole mystery color.
Mystery.
Yeah, mystery color. So, but she has that paper, and it's a grit paper. It's about 320, 280, somewhere. The higher the number of grit, then it's softer and more smoother. And the lower the grit, then it's harder and more coarse.
Well, like sandpaper, really.
It is sandpaper.
Right,
It's sanded paper. So, but there's other types of mediums that I've worked on, surfaces like a velour that is on a mounted board, and that's kind of for floral or portraiture. It doesn't allow you to put a lot of pressure on it without getting any feedback. I don't know what the word would be for it. There's a word out there, but it's stable. It's too stable for me. And the sanded paper allows me to press and lift with my pastel, so it's like a paintbrush. Mm-hmm. And when I started taking classes with Kitty and then other instructors and reading about pastel and looking and seeing them, seeing Monet's work and thinking, how can I paint like that with my pastel? You can do that with your pastel. You can do a beautiful photographic rendering with pastel. You can do pieces that are punctuated with color or more pressure within it, but you're not going to have the texture. You're going to have mark making instead of texture.
Yeah. So if you had 20 minutes with Monet, if once you enter the gates of heaven, assuming either he's there or you're there, if you had 20 minutes to ask one question, what would that question be?
Can I watch you paint?
That's the best question of all, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's the watching.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I learned, and that's how a lot of people learn. That's why we do, instructional videos, and we go to demos and we watch. One time I went to see I can't remember the name of the artist, but he's famous, and we had to pay $75 to watch him paint for 3 hours. He had a half an hour break in there, and just watching someone paint is mesmerizing. And there's always this point in the painting process where things start to click.
Yeah.
And everyone will wonder, when is that, oh, I see what he's doing, or I see how she's making, and this information comes from all over different sources of different artists and different styles, and all that information comes in and feeds us as artists from our experiences, and we push it out there.
But the first 45 minutes, you're thinking, I think I wasted my $75.
Not even.
No.
Not even.
No.
No, because you're like, wow. I think if you were a golf instructor and you went to one of these things, you wouldn't like it. But if you're an artist and you've tried painting and you've experienced it, then it may be a little more magical.
Is there an experience with a particular, perhaps well-known artist that is a special memory for you in your career?
Yes. When I was about 11 or 12 years old, there was a man that lived next door, and he had a studio in a shack. It was probably where they kept all the garden equipment or something. And his name was Robert Geis. And I'll never forget him. And he would let me go into his studio, and you'd walk in and he smelled this oil paint and turpentine, and he had his easel over here, and he had a storage of whatever was in the back. It was like a scary dark place where all the paintings were, dust and spiders and everything. And he had a door with a window, and he was into astronomy, and he would say, I want you to, you got some talent here, I want you to draw me this or draw me that. And then we talk about how to draw the face, and he had sketches of where the head was here, and if you had and tilted it here, it would be the same height as the head here. I don't know if that's visual, but like if you were to go like that.
Yeah.
So that's how you can measure your drawings. So with that was like, oh, spatial relationships. And so he was my first first real experience with being an artist. And one day he came over and he said, here's a brush, here's some paint, get painting. I'm like, how do I do that? Oh, you need some turp too. But anyway, he gave me a little bit of it to play with. And we were really poor, and getting something like that was a treat.
Nice.
Yeah, that was my first experience with that.
Yeah,
don't
see,
talk
but
about it very
those
often.
moments are so important and so impactful because they change lives.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that he had the foresight to see that in you, and then to kind of, he probably knew you were poor. He was probably poor too if he lived next door.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
But the really interesting thing too, to wrap that story up with Robert Geis, is when I had graduated from my university with my graphic design degree, applied art and design, I called him up. I had to look him up somewhere back in the phone book, or call in
Phone book, what's that?
411 or something like that, how to get a number in San Diego. And I said, I need to find Robert Geis in East Side San Diego. So 411 was the number you call for
Right.
back then.
Remember those days?
Yeah, I know, I can't remember. I can't believe I remember that number. Anyway, and so I got his number and I called him, and I knew he was going to be crotchety by this time, and he was always crotchety anyway. And I said, hi, Robert Geis, this is Brenda Boylan, or Brenda Bartell, that was my maiden name back then. And I was the little girl that lived next door and used to teach me painting. And he's like, what are you calling me for? You can't be calling me. And I'm like going, yes, I am. Like, I think there was like a proprietary thing for a woman to call a man or something.
Generational
thing. Yeah, generational thing. And it dawned on me that that's what he was mad about. And I said, no worries. I just wanted to tell you thank you. I just wanted to tell you thank you. And then I said, I remember you talking to me about how you wanted to see Halley's Comet before you died. Yeah, I remember him telling me that because he saw it when he was a child, and he wanted to see Halley's Comet before he died, whether that happened or not. But I just made that connection and shared that with him. He goes, oh, I remember you. So I filled my bucket. I made it happen. It was like closure, but joy, and like telling a grandfather or a father that you made a difference in my life.
Nice.
Yeah, it was so cool.
So what are you doing to make a difference in other people's lives? What are you doing to carry that on?
Teaching, sharing my art, laughing, talking art, being a good person, trying to, making a difference in some little way. I don't know. That's a hard question to answer.
So when somebody calls you and you're that old crotchety old lady, and you know at the end,
Crotchety?
it could happen. It could happen.
I caught you.
So when you're at the edge of your life and you're looking back, what do you want people to think about what you've done here on Earth with your art?
With my art?
Or maybe it's something else, but...
Well, that's a big part of me, but that's not all of me.
I figured as much.
Yeah. When I was a little girl, my mom said I came out laughing, and I believed her until my kids were born, and I was expecting them to giggle and laugh at me more. And I realized it wasn't months later that happened, and I was really disappointed. And so I guess she said that thinking back, like, oh, I guess she was just telling me that I was always really happy.
Yeah.
And that's how I think people will remember me by.
Where do you find that joy? Is that because we all have down moments?
Oh, yeah.
How do but you never seem to have that. Is this a learned skill? Is this just something that you were born with? Do you have to pull yourself up, lift yourself out of these conditions? What do you do?
I think everyone is born with a disposition when they come out, honestly. But there are things that come in our lives that help change us and mold us into who we are. I can say by trying to be healthy, thinking good of people, sharing of yourself, and making light of myself, because I'm not perfect. But if I can laugh at myself, then I can laugh at anything, because I'm a trip. No, I'm not a trip. I'm just challenging. Poor Joe. He has to live with me.
Well, you and I and Lori and Joe had an experience together. We got to go to Cuba together.
Oh, yeah.
And we were the first large art group to go in Cuba in the history of Cuba. I think there were 100 of us.
There are 100 people.
And that had never happened in Cuba before. And of course, it was, we were not even technically legally allowed to be there. It was just kind of on the edge of where it was made legal, and then it was taken away again. But we had a chance to get to know each other there a little bit, and paint together and be out in the crowd together.
That was an amazing trip.
It was pretty cool.
I brought my boots with me here to Austin that I wore in Cuba, and every time I wear those boots, I think of Cuba.
Really?
I wore them all over Havana every day. They need to be polished up a little bit now, but they take me back. That was an amazing trip, Eric, and every time I come across those images on my phone, it was amazing. And they've been in the news. The country's been in the news more so lately, and they'll show images of people on the street. I'm like, those are the colors I remember. Those the cultural gestures and the buildings and just the light that is there in Cuba. Everything is so uniquely Cuba. When you see it, you're like, that's that country. It has its own flavor.
I think that we have to force ourselves to come up with things like this. You came on this trip and you created a lifetime memory, and I'm sure you, like everybody else who went, had these moments of, can I afford it, or can I take the time, or what about the kids, or what about the parents, or all of these things that enter into it. Mm-hmm. And yet, there's going to be a time when all we're going to have are our memories. And so
if you don't lose your memory first.
Yeah.
This is going to happen to me.
Yeah, I can't remember what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just joking.
Good one.
Yeah.
You got me on that one.
Gotcha. Anyway, I think it's important that we create memories. I think you are creating memories for those of us who are watching your career, watching you interact with the painting community. And I just want to applaud you. Thank you for doing this interview today. And thank you for being a big inspiration.
Oh, thank you, Eric, so much for the opportunity. I've been having fun. Boy, you make me feel like $1 million. Thank you, Eric, for everything that you do for us as well. I appreciate it very much.
Very welcome. Our guest today has been Brenda Boylan. Thank you for watching. I'm Eric Rhodes. I had so much fun interviewing Brenda Boylan. She is a gas, really a lot of fun, and a terrific painter. That's from the brand new video, Pastel FUNdamentals. And you can learn more about it at PaintTube.tv. And of course, we have a discount for you. In the comments section, you'll find that discount code. Just use it when you check out. Thank you for watching. I'm Eric Rhodes.
Hi, I'm Brenda Boylan, and welcome to my workshop. In this workshop, we're going to be diving into pastels, and I'm going to teach you everything you're going to need to know to create a good painting. We're going to be learning about the materials, the supplies, the composition, color theory. There's so much to learn about pastels that my intention is to share everything that I know. What's unique about my workshop is that I love to teach fun things. I love to have fun while I'm teaching. The workshop should be lighthearted, and that way we're more likely to receive this information a lot easier when we use a light approach. What holds students back is the fear of failure and making mistakes on their work, and they're inhibited by perfectionism. You'll see that even I make mistakes as a professional artist, and that there's ways to fix them. I like to address this as a real creative medium, and if I can help you have a lot of fun, your ability to learn faster will come along with the joy of creating. A student's painting skills are only built with their intention to build and upon and practice. It doesn't come magically. So come join me in this painting journey along with all my other little pastel friends here, my pastels, and we can make some color.